Hello, and welcome to another episode of Power On Podcast Bebop. I am one of your hosts, Monogatha553, and with me is the infallible, the always do good. I don't know what other words I could use. Mr. Sushi B, how you doing?
I'm hanging in there, ready for a big episode. This is a pretty heavy one.
Yeah, this is where things go. They're going, and then all of a sudden they start going.
Yeah.
We finally get some movement. As alive as the series may have been prior to for those first 4 episodes, this is where it starts to go. Oh, okay. Yeah, and this was, I remember as a kid in high school, so less a kid and more young adult, of this being like one of those, oh man, did you see that episode kind of things. And I missed this episode like 4 or 5 times before I finally saw it.
Okay.
I was mildly mad, to put it the least, because it took forever to get back to it to catch it. So it took a while before I finally ended up seeing this episode. I think I have it still buried in one of my dressers. I've got the still of the point of which Spike and Vicious are figuratively and a little bit more metaphorically as well at each other's throats. I had that as a t-shirt, and I would wear it, and then teacher said that I wasn't allowed to wear it because it promoted violence. So I taped over it and then wrote "Help, I'm being oppressed." And she did not take very kindly to that.
I would assume
not. I was being censored. I did not appreciate it. It's cartoons. And I know I'm going to get flack for saying that anime's cartoons, but they're cartoons. They're just... There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to admit that. But, yeah, that's at least. Do you have any aside on this episode?
I do not. No. As you already know, I basically watched these all within
I know.
order, right? So I don't really have any personal backstory that's that exciting or interesting, unfortunately.
I don't know if I would say it's exciting, but...
Well, I certainly wasn't censored for watching this.
So. But yeah, we have Ballad of Fallen Angels, episode 5. And this, if you wanted to be, I don't want to say, if you wanted to boil the series down, you could boil it down to 5 episodes, and this being the first one. Really. It's everything else that's going on is superfluous to a degree. I mean, it's a lot of window dressing, but it's a very pretty and very large window. But yeah, this is where it kicks off. If there was a, I guess, spine to the whole like nervous system of the story, this is the spinal cord. Like, this is the start of it. And boy, does it start off kind of thing, because you get introduced to a setting, a couple characters that we've never seen before, right? And then it just kind of kicks off from there. Is there what are some things you like about this episode?
Obviously it's really nice to get the backstory of one of the characters finally, and give us a sense of some of their history. And I would say I like the sort of back and forth between Spike and Jet, particularly in this episode. Faye kind of takes a bit of a back seat to most of the stuff that's going on, and is kind of more or less an afterthought by the characters themselves, and to me as a viewer as well. She's not really utilized much in this episode in my feeling as I'm watching it, other than just as she kind of keeps the story moving along, but she's not really that important to the overall narrative here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even though she does have presence and a sizable chunk in the midsection, it's less what she does until the end, which is not almost, but more of like an off-screen sort of understanding what goes on when she contacts Jet about what the heck's going on with Spike and everything.
Right.
I like that Spike is not very forthcoming with any of his past. Like, it is not something that he talks about. Like, even, I can't really mention much in the way of, what goes on behind the scenes in that regard, but like, when it came to Jet, there, as you mentioned, I like that. This is the first time there's like a really, really strong disagreement and not just, I'm cashing in my chips and stuff. It's like, I'm not doing this. I don't like it. Something's up. And he's like, okay, all right. Looks like I'm doing this myself.
Right.
And it's nice to have that sort of abrasion so they're just not all lockstep in everything where it's like, oh yes, we're going to do this. Friendship is magic. Kind of thing, that there's this disagreement and it's a disagreement that's not just wrapped up, immediately. It's like, oh, we disagree on this. Well, that's all right. No, Jet does try to be like, okay, fine. He's still protective of his own past. So he just sort of talks in coded language of this is what happens when you get ahead of the game kind of thing and go headstrong and that sort of thing, but not really telling exactly what happened with his arm,
right?
Which is nice. So there's a lot more deftness when it comes to how it was approached, writing it and everything, and not just fumbling into, oh, here's a 3 to 5 minute info dump on what happened to Jet and his arm. That'll come later.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, no, I think that's probably the strongest point in this episode. Like, it's interesting to meet Vicious and so forth, but for me, I don't feel like you get a lot other than the confrontation, because you don't really get any of the true backstory or what's the big disagreement between the two of those characters as of yet. Obviously, you get the sense based on the vibe of everything that's going on, and that Vicious is obviously up to something behind the scenes to trying to take over the syndicate, or he's got something in mind here. And obviously, the history of Spike is a sore point for him, because like, whenever Spike's name comes up, he doesn't like wince necessarily, but he's waiting for this opportunity to come back to get some kind of revenge over something. So that's cool, but they don't really feed you too many breadcrumbs there.
Yeah, I would say though, and it's masked by a lot of metaphorical language, plus just the overt imagery of the cathedral and reference and like the metaphorical language with like referencing angels and demons and beasts being bled dry. Whatever Vicious is at this point, because by like at the ending imagery of the episodes, as well as the flickering back and forth between memory and the present as Spike is falling out of the cathedral, or having been tossed out of the cathedral, as he's plummeting back down to the ground, that whatever Vicious is now, like, he's made that choice. He is there. There is no nonsense, that, and he feels like, I think, he puts it out there that it's like, Spike, this isn't you. Whatever you are doing right now, this is not you. and either I'm going to wake you up to it or I'll put you in the grave for it. I don't know. I think it's like after watching it a bunch, but when you watch it for the first time, yeah, it's not really exactly clear. And not in that it's a muddled mess, but that, like you said, those breadcrumbs are there, but unless you know what you're looking for, you're not going to find a lot of them. You're going to kind of be like, what the heck was that about?
Right.
I'm kind of confused.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to keep the intrigue going, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
which helps as the series goes on, but we don't really get a lot for a little bit of time here, and then there's a big stretch of time where you don't get a lot again until the very end.
Right, and it's incrementally longer, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this is the episode 5. The next time won't be for like another 7 episodes or so,
Right.
and then and that's a twofer.
Yeah.
And then it won't be until the back half at the end where there's another twofer.
Right.
That's a bit spacing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For Spike specifically, obviously, like you get with the other characters, we'll get some on the latter end of the episodes. We'll get some more info soon, which is good. But just going back to the Spike and Jet piece, just kind of based on their conversation and what we know up through episodes 1 through 4, I kind of got the sense that I think in episode 1 they want to imply that they've been working together for at least a fairly long amount of time, but through this disagreement, it makes me feel as though they actually haven't. Like, it almost feels as if this has only been a relationship that's been like a year.
I think that is the case, though. It's only been like a handful of months.
Right.
I could be wrong on the timing of it, but it hasn't been a lengthy time.
Right.
I could be wrong.
Like episode 1 tries to imply otherwise. It almost feels like, oh yeah, they've been working together a long time, and then you get to this one, and you're like, I'm not getting that sense anymore.
Right. Yeah, just because they do, because there's not much in the way of opposition, and that opposition when it is there, it's kind of like, okay, whatever.
Right.
Okay, yeah. And it's like, oh,
it's not serious enough to disrupt their personal beliefs, or whereas this finally does.
Right. So, yeah, I think the middle section, not so much phase stuff, because it's pretty straightforward how it's going. The stuff with Annie and Spike, while it's necessary for giving us more on Spike's background, almost feels like it's out of place in a way. I don't know. There's just something about it that just feels off. And I don't know. I don't know if it's because they cut back and forth between those two. If they should have just instead just kept them both as like long scenes. But that's if I was to kind of levy a, not necessarily a complaint, but just a question mark on, I don't know about this, it would be that.
Well, them speaking in code during that conversation too, I feel doesn't help matters. We don't really get a good sense of Spike. Like, we do get a bit, but it's still like in riddle. It doesn't really lay enough out to be like, okay, so what is the exact relationship here with Annie? What's her relationship with Mal Yen-rai? Who's this other person in the picture? Like, it's nice that they're, again, leading with those breadcrumbs, but I think that scene doesn't give me enough to get interested until, okay, at least with Vicious and Spike, it's the confrontation piece. So I'm like, I don't mind it, but I'm like, it feels like a bit of a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, I want to say that was her husband. If I was to make a wager.
Well, because she says only 2 people can call her Anastasia, right?
Right. So, and it's a bit of an oddly delivered way that Spike goes about it, because he's just kind of like, put foot in mouth.
Nonchalant.
It's like, wow, you're playing this card, and you're playing it at the wrong time.
Right.
tisk tisk.
Musically, this episode, again with the name of obviously Ballad of the Fallen Angels, opera is very much the musical tone and theme of this episode. Not only because they go to the opera, but just even during the confrontation between Vicious and Spike and the henchmen and stuff, right, is very like boisterous with that operatic sort of theme and element, and sort of like the it kind of made me think of like sitting in an amphitheater, right, and like sort of the way the old tragedy type plays would be drawn out. Like that's kind of the theme and the feeling I get from this episode.
It's certainly painting it for that, and yeah, I love that Ave Maria plays. I know it gets used pretty frequently, but at the time when I had first heard it, I wasn't aware of a bunch of other media that used it, and it's a really good piece of it, or rendition of it, I should say. So
I think the first time I heard that was Fantasia, right, with Night on Bald Mountain with Chernobog. Ever seen that? Ave Maria is what plays what sends him back to the mountain. Well, he never leaves the mountain. But
honestly, I don't think I've seen that all the way through.
Yeah, okay.
And then not like I think I've only like caught snippets of it, and it's people like in reference of it kind of thing. I don't think I've ever.
Okay. Yeah, it's Ave Maria that plays that kind of brings the light back to the village and protects the people.
Is that the one
sends
that
him
does
back?
The Night on Bald Mountain or whatever? Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, it's the Chernobog is the demon on the mountain, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm aware of the imagery of it and stuff, but yeah, not like actually sat through and watched it.
It's not very long. I think it's maybe 12 minutes or something. So.
Oh, okay. See, I couldn't even told you how long. Like
it's not
ballparked it.
Yeah, so, something like that, like 10 to 15 minutes max, something like that. Because all of the scenes in Fantasia are big collection of different pieces of music and stuff, so they're not very long, most of them.
Gotcha.
But yeah, anyways.
I mean, from the get-go, Mal gets killed. Another capo or leader for a different syndicate gets blown up, and then Mal's like, you can't keep doing that. We can't keep doing this. The syndicates are tearing each other apart. Blah 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 blah. So you get this idea that these syndicates are maybe a little too into the idea of bloodletting. And
they're going soft.
And well, at least Mal was, and Vicious certainly wasn't having any of it.
Right.
And then he mentions Spike, and then Annie mentions how Mal was looking for Spike. And so you're getting this pull for Spike to be like, oh well, Spike did some bad things. I mean, and it isn't until you get to the cathedral that you get this cold-blooded killer out of him. Like you had the brash quipping, able to do Jeet Kune Do kind of thing, and able to fly his swordfish and whatnot. He's pointed a gun. Yeah, he's done some of the bang, but he's just kind of like, he's zoned in.
Right.
No other way to. He is zoned in. He's here for this.
Well, he's quite careless. And we get that pretty clearly in this episode too. That he's very reckless when it comes to this. Like, I don't know if it's overconfidence or what it is, or if it's just blind rage.
He's a stubborn show-off.
Yeah, just because he takes out a few of these henchmen with relative ease and with, I would say, some level of strategy. But then once he gets onto the steps, and it's just like, why would you expose yourself when you're
like,
trying
whatever.
to face this many other gunmen, and he gets shot, and it's like, well, that was not a particularly wise decision. Like, if you were really, of course, we're not in the heat of the moment of a gun battle, but it just seemed like a poor decision for somebody who seems to be relatively experienced in being in a gunfight. But again, is it also the sense of doesn't really care, is reckless to the point of death doesn't matter. If you can take vicious with him, that's preferable, but
right.
And even
I have comments and thoughts on it, but I'll hold it until like the end, because I think until we get to that point, because there's some stuff I want to unpack that I've slowly felt about Spike more as I've watched this, and also just as I've gotten older. Just certain things about that character. So I like how Jet is just kind of, I'm gonna trim on the bonsai. Do. And then he snips off the, kind of another like, oh no, I'm butchering it, illusion sort of thing, and he gets the call from Faye, and then he heads out and stuff. I like how he goes to his bonsai. It's like he sticks to his word for the most part.
But he can't keep his concentration. He cuts an entire branch off. So
right. Yeah, no, I mean it's nice. I don't want to say like allegorical. That's not a good way to put it. What's the word I want to use? It's because it's not foreshadowing.
Is that a sort of a reflection?
Yeah, it's a nice reflection on what's going on and what's going on in his head and his temperament and stuff like that. So
this episode, now I hope that this isn't unpacking something for you, but just this episode really starts to show the sort of certain characters, again, like laying into their sort of personal beliefs and their ethics and so forth. I think we see the picture of those three characters a little bit clearer, where they're going to end up by the end. Like this is very much like the first glimpse into the window, which on one hand is a little bit disappointing in a way. Once we're going to get there, we're going to get to that end point, and I'm hoping I can remember this episode by that time. But it's interesting that what we see here, by the time we get to the end, how much change or lack of change has occurred in the character development.
Yeah, no, it doesn't step on my toes about that, because it's, it's just something, like I said, that's been, I guess, mulling over in my head over the years, that I've watched it. And it's just, I guess it's kind of neat that's, and it's probably just from me being older, as opposed to, me seeing something new and whatnot. It's just me seeing it differently due to just how I am nowadays. I mean, I think you mentioned it pretty on point with the amphitheater comment earlier, and people are suckers for those kind of things. And I don't mean that in a bad way. There's something about that speaks, I think, to humanity and just people on an individual level, or people that they know, that you can try to do a lot of things, but it comes down to the person themselves, and whether or not they want to do change how they play the game.
Hmm.
This wonderful game of life.
Hmm.
I don't know. I like it. I like the recklessness that he does have, this sort of reckless abandon, because it's there in those episodes, like we mentioned in the previous episode about the Gateway Shuffle, where he really comes alive when he's got this ridiculous bit about going through the gateway and taking out the missile or the rocket with the biohazard.
Mm-hmm.
Like he really comes alive at that. You even see it in the first episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
That he really enjoys those. Let's straddle the line a little bit.
Yeah, being an agitator.
And then being an agitator and all that sort of fun jazz. Oof, give that here. Second helping of that. Keep that on my plate. He really likes that stuff. Almost reminds me of how certain people are like adrenaline junkies in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Where, once they get that kick, they need that kick, and gotta go to the next big thing, gotta go to the next big thing, gotta go to the next big thing.
So
you kind of wonder if, yeah, maybe.
He just gets to film it for, put it on film and become a millionaire.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, it's neat to see how each of those characters really goes about playing it, even if Faye's part is a bit but I think this happens to Faye a lot, and I think it happens to them all a lot as well, is that they just sort of get in their own way. Or they, in her case especially, she'll bite off more than she can chew.
Yep.
And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Just on that point, Spike. Well, just that point.
Hmm?
I think those first 4 episodes show a sense of carefree attitude, but this shows a bit more of that careless attitude. Like he couldn't care less of what really is going to ultimately happen here. But those first 4, it's like he's a bit carefree because the baggage on those issues or those bounties and so forth is not there. It's like you said, it's that thrill seeking. Whereas there's obviously baggage of some kind that we only get slight snippets of. And right. So like, that's where I'm thinking he's more careless by this point. Like it's just all caution into the wind. I just got to get this done, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And it's I'm trying to figure out ways to do this without like pulling in other information from other parts of the episode,
but we don't have
series
to,
and
so.
stuff. I know. But I'm trying to like, just so you can we can keep it to this one in particular. It's just, he that carelessness, and just general callousness when it comes up, how he's brutishly dealing with Jess and just kind of like a spoiled child in a way. Like, well, I'm going to do this anyways. You're not going to stop me. And then, at certain points there, you can really, and maybe it's simply due to the limitations of how long the episode is and stuff. At least in this episode, you can certainly see an immaturity in his character. I always think of that bit where Annie's drinking all that alcohol, and then he wants to be all like serious. Well, if it's from Mal, I'll drink it myself. And it's like, well, okay, But Annie's been Annie's like down half the bottle.
She's
already.
loaded.
You're a few steps behind. Come on now.
Hmm.
Oh, you sweet summer child.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, I'm good to move into quotes if you're good.
Yeah, let us go.
Okay. I'm not overtly excited by pretty much any of the quotes in this episode, so I had a hard time finding one.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to pick, though, it's when Vicious is talking about the angels being forced out of heaven and so forth to Spike.
Mm-hmm.
And Spike's response is, I'm just watching a dream I never wake up from.
Right.
But the line delivery is fine, but it's the look on Spike that kind of gets me, and I'm kind of like, weird, because he's smirking and sort of, again, being, in his mind, playful about it, but I think the connotation of this is quite strong, actually. But maybe he doesn't want to admit it. So, yeah, but that was the one I came with. The other one is the you sing off key. I found it very interesting that for such a serious episode, basically the whole way through, that they would end with a gag.
Well, I don't know if it's a gag. I think it's reinforcing his idea that he's trying to keep his past very separate. And when presented with a similar situation where he fell in love with Julia, with Faye, whether it's due to being in a similar situation as that, or what have you, he's specifically chosen to be like, hey, you sing off key, just to get at her. Yeah. Because I'll be honest, I got a little bit of the bad hearing. I listened to that. They sounded pretty much the same, Spike. I don't know what.
Well, maybe because he's in his dream state at that point, so maybe that's where it's clouding the idea here that in his mind he's reflecting back onto the Julia moments, but in reality, when he finally kind of comes to and he hears that it's Faye that's actually singing, he's like, wait a second. This is not the reality I thought I was in. This is so much worse. And his body looks like it's in a lot worse condition at this point than it was at that time.
Not doing so well.
He bandaged up.
It is an interesting thing as well that he sort of rejects that opportunity, we'll say. Because that'll come up again here and there. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting thing that pops up with it, because a lot of times in shows and stuff, it's always this, it always, not always, but there are a lot of times where it's just kind of like, they fall for each other. Oh, how is it great? Yeah. And that sort of thing. And this is a little bit more murky. Some feelings in there that don't really, they get kind of buried. Just stuff them down there. They don't exist. And I like that, because sometimes that can make for some very, if you have enough proper subtext, you can pull things that could go one way or the other. I like the Pipu drink. I want to drink some Pipu. Need me some Pipu cans, so please send me some Pipu cans.
I didn't get in trouble for that.
Right. The other one, I like the delivery of when Faye pops in after Spike's already gone off, and then Faye keeps on asking about the bounty and everything, and Jet's like, he says something like tough or whatever. He just walks off, and he's just like whatever, and then she's like, good God, men are such babies.
Yeah.
It's just a good delivery. I like the delivery of it. And when Spike comes back, I like that he pulls out a grenade and gun from the fridge like you do. You gotta keep that stuff chilled at a certain temperature. And when he asks where she's at, he's like, Jet's like, she saw the bounty and had a lapse of sanity.
Oh yeah.
So,
Jet is so done with both of them at the end of this episode.
but I think that's a great reflection because he's in his mid-30s, right? I think he's like 35 or something.
Something like that.
And Spike's 30 or 27, and Faye is 24. So yeah, there's going to be some differences there. And I like that it comes up in this sort of thing because yeah, like two dudes, a dude who's 35 and the other one's 27. Yeah, you still could bro it about. It's like, well, not everybody, of course, but a lot of times guys can be that different like age gap, and it really doesn't.
Yeah, it's not a huge age gap. There is like an age gap there for sure, but
Right. I mean, there's something, and with Jet's more, I guess, nurturing tendencies, we'll say, and it shows his bit more of a responsibility to him and stuff. I think that it also gives him this element of more of like how we would probably look at like our grandparents or even like great grandparents or something. Kind of thing. Because nobody else like really cooks proper. Spike tries it sometimes. I mean, catching things on fire to a charbroil. That's attempting to cook. He doesn't really cook too frequently.
No.
So, yeah. So, the bounty for this one.
Which was
on Mal for 28 million. Yes.
Yeah, I still like this episode, even though it doesn't really get answered until much later, which is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like as I said, it's okay. I still find it is nice to get a good chunk of backstory finally after those first 4 episodes being very ragtag and just wild and free kind of. So I'll give this, and I'm really wondering if my opinion is going to change on this episode by the time we get to the end. But I'm going to give it, I'll give it 40 million wulongs.
Okay. I would probably give it a 35. Like, I like it, but I think the previous 2 have a bit better energy for me. Like, it's still an enjoyable one. Yes, you get you get the Vicious and Spike little back and forth fight sort of thing. And that image of Vicious holding the sword and Spike with the gun right there with the stained glass and everything is primo image. Love that image. Great stuff. But it just, there's not that it's off, but there's just something I feel like it's missing, and I don't know exactly what it is. And maybe it is having a little bit more carefree than the careless that might make me a little bit more warm to it, as opposed to a little like, yeah, I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. It's missing a percentage of Ein in this episode.
I need more Ein. Give me more Ein.
This is back when we talked about Ein. It's like Ein just kind of gets shoved off. And it's like, he's not that important.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the. I mean, it's kind of how some pets get treated, unfortunately.
Yeah. He does get a little bit of a moment in the next episode. So.
Yeah. So yeah, that is it for this episode. Please let us know thoughts and feelings on the Ballad of Fallen Angels. What kind of bounty would you put on this episode? Dun dun dun. So that is it for Mr. Sushi B and I. Unless you have any other ending
I'm
comments.
good.
All right, then we're out of here. So see you, Space Cowboy.